Hannah Kim kept her eyes down as she walked through the mess hall of Station Artemis. The other soldiers laughed and shouted around her, but nobody looked her way. That was fine. She preferred it that way. At 22 years old, she had spent most of her life being invisible, and the Terran Defense Corps was no different. She found an empty corner table and ate her rations quietly. Across the room, her squad mates gathered around their usual spot. Corporal Teeman Park was telling another one of his stories, waving his hands dramatically while everyone laughed. Specialist Una Choi sat next to him, adding her own commentary that made the group laugh even harder. Sergeant Min-Ho Kong stood at the head of the table like always, arms crossed, nodding along with a slight smile. Nobody noticed when Hannah finished her meal and left. They never did. She made her way to the equipment bay, where she felt most comfortable. Engineering had always made sense to her. Machines were predictable. They followed rules. They did not judge you for being quiet or call you boring because you did not have funny stories to tell. Hannah ran her fingers over her helmet, checking the camera mount one more time. Most soldiers disabled their helmet cameras. They said it made them feel watched, like command did not trust them. Hannah kept hers running. She liked having a record of things. The camera did not care if she spoke or stayed silent. It just recorded what was real. The alarm came without warning. Red lights flooded the station, and the emergency siren screamed through every corridor. Hannah grabbed her gear and ran toward the deployment bay. Her heart hammered in her chest, but her hands stayed steady as she checked her rifle and sealed her combat suit. The briefing was short. The Vraxi horde had attacked Coalition Outpost Delta 7. The insectoid aliens were ruthless and fast, overwhelming the small garrison before they could send a proper distress signal. Hannah's squad would deploy immediately for evacuation and recovery. Standard procedure. In and out. Nothing complicated. Sergeant Min-Ho Kong barely glanced at Hannah as he ran through the mission parameters. His eyes moved over the squad, making contact with each soldier. When he got to her, his gaze just slid past like she was part of the wall. She was used to it. The dropship shook violently as it entered the atmosphere of the border world. Hannah strapped in tight, watching the others. Teeman was cracking jokes to hide his nervousness. Una checked her weapon for the third time. Private Dayon Co., the youngest in the squad, looked pale and kept swallowing hard. They hit the ground hard. The doors opened, and the smell of burning metal and something else, something organic and wrong, flooded in. The outpost was worse than the briefing had suggested. Smoke rose from collapsed buildings. Bodies lay scattered across the compound. Both human and alien. Sergeant Min-Ho Kong ordered them forward in standard formation. Hannah took her position at the rear, where she always ended up. The quiet one. The one who would not be missed if something went wrong. She activated her helmet camera and swept her rifle across the ruined landscape. The attack came from everywhere at once. Vraxi warriors burst from underground tunnels that intelligence had not known existed. They moved like nightmares, all chittering mandibles and razor-sharp limbs. The air filled with plasma fire and screaming. Hannah's training took over. She fired in controlled bursts, falling back with the others toward a defensive position. But there were too many. The Vraxi had planned this ambush perfectly. They had known exactly when the rescue team would arrive. Something exploded to her left. The shockwave threw her sideways into a collapsed building. Her helmet display cracked, but the camera kept recording. She could hear Sergeant Min-Ho Kong shouting orders, hear the rest of the squad returning fire, but the sound seemed distant and wrong. Hannah tried to stand, but her leg would not work right. She looked down and saw blood spreading across her thigh. Not deep enough to kill her immediately, but bad enough. She pressed her hand against the wound and dragged herself deeper into the rubble. The sounds of battle moved away. Her squad was retreating without her. No, not retreating. Running. She could not blame them. Nobody had probably noticed she was missing yet. Nobody ever noticed her. Her helmet radio crackled with static. She tried to respond, but something was wrong with the transmitter. She could hear scattered words from command, trying to reach the squad, but she could not answer back. One-way communication only. The camera still worked, though. It transmitted data back to the fleet, even when nothing else functioned. Hana took a deep breath and assessed her situation. She was alone in hostile territory. Her squad was gone. She was wounded. The Vraxi controlled the outpost. By every logical measure, she should find somewhere to hide and wait for death or rescue, whichever came first. Instead, she tore a strip from her uniform and tied off the leg wound. The bleeding slowed. Her hands did not shake, even though fear sat like ice in her stomach. She had been afraid her whole life. Afraid to speak up, afraid to be noticed, afraid to take up space in the world. But fear had never stopped her from doing what needed to be done. She checked her rifle. Still operational. 3 power cells left, plus the one loaded. Her engineering kit was intact on her belt. The compound had scattered equipment everywhere, both human and Vraxi. She could work with that dot through a gap in the rubble. She saw movement. Vraxi soldiers were executing wounded coalition troops. 3 survivors huddled behind an overturned transport, trapped and waiting to die. She recognized one of them, Private Dayan Seao, the scared young soldier from her own squad. Hana did not think. Thinking would mean acknowledging how impossible this was. She just moved. Her helmet camera recorded everything. Every step. Every decision. Every moment that would change her life and eventually change how the galaxy saw humanity. But in that moment, Hannah did not know any of that. She only knew that people needed help and nobody else was there to give it. She was the invisible girl, the one nobody noticed or remembered. And that, she realized as she slipped through the shadows toward the Vraxi position, might be the only advantage she had. The quiet ones learned to move without being seen. They learned to listen and observe. They learned patience. The galaxy had overlooked humanity, just like her squad overlooked her. That was about to become a very serious mistake. Lieutenant So-Min Lee sat in the communications center of Station Artemis, watching multiple screens at once. Each screen showed a different helmet camera feed from the squad, deployed to Delta 7. Most of the feeds had gone dark during the ambush. Only a few remained active, and they showed soldiers running, fighting, desperately trying to survive. One feed in the corner of her display kept transmitting even though it had gone silent on radio. Private Hana Kim's camera. So-Min almost switched it off. The girl was probably dead. Camera still running on automatic. But something made her keep watching. The camera moved steadily through the ruined outpost. Not panicked running. Deliberate movement. Calculated. The view swept across a pile of Vraxi equipment, and the camera paused. Hands entered the frame. Hannah's hands, carefully examining alien weapons. She picked up a plasma rifle, checked the charge, and kept moving. So-Min leaned forward. The girl was not dead. She was hunting. 6 hours passed, and Hana's camera never stopped transmitting. So-Min watched it all, unable to look away. She watched Hana set traps using Vraxi explosives. She watched her crawl through ventilation shafts that the larger aliens could not follow. She watched her observe patrol patterns and strike when the moment was right. The footage showed Hannah find the 3 trapped soldiers. Private Dayan CO looked moments away from panic. The 2 aliens with him, a Kalthari warrior and a Quellan technician, were wounded and exhausted. Hannah did not say anything dramatic. The camera picked up her voice, quiet and steady, just 3 words. Follow me. Stay low. She led them through the compound, using routes that made no sense until someone realized what Hana was doing. The girl had hacked into the Vraxi communication network. She was listening to their patrol reports and avoiding them in real time. More than that, she was feeding them false information, redirecting squads away from the evacuation route. Commander Ji-won Park entered the communications center and stood behind Summon's chair. She watched the feed in silence for several minutes. When she finally spoke, her voice was tight with suppressed emotion. Is this real? Not edited or enhanced? Yes, Commander. Raw feed from Private Kim's helmet camera. She has been operating alone for 6 hours now. The commander said nothing. On screen, Hana reached a critical junction in the outpost. The evacuation ships could land here if someone could hold the position long enough. The problem was obvious. Vraxi forces controlled 3 approaches to the landing zone. One person could not possibly hold against that many enemies. Hana did not try to hold all 3 approaches. She collapsed 2 of them. Using charges scavenged from Vraxi equipment and her own engineering knowledge, she brought down entire sections of the compound structure. Now the enemy could only come from one direction. Then she waited. The Vraxi came in force, expecting easy prey. Instead, they found a single human soldier who had turned their own defenses against them. She had rigged the choke point with every trap and trick she could improvise. The camera recorded 2 hours of brutal, desperate combat. Hana fired until her weapons overheated. She used debris as cover. She fell back step by step, but never broke. The evacuation ships landed. The 3 soldiers she had rescued made it aboard. Civilian survivors fled from hiding places and ran for the transports. Hana covered their retreat, still firing, her ammunition nearly gone. Finally, Sergeant Minho Kang and what remained of the original squad returned with reinforcements. They found Hana collapsed behind a barricade, her armor scorched and torn, bleeding from a dozen wounds. She looked up at the sergeant with those quiet eyes and made her report in a voice barely above a whisper. Mission accomplished. Civilians evacuated. Outpost lost. Then she passed out. The medical team rushed her to the ships. Sergeant Minho Kang stood in the landing zone, looking at the carnage one small, quiet soldier had created. His face showed something between horror and awe. Back on Station Artemis, Commander Ji-won Park immediately classified the footage. This was too important, too politically sensitive to release without careful consideration. Humanity was still new to the Galactic Coalition. The other species barely tolerated them, considered them weak and primitive. This footage showed something that would change perceptions, but secrets never stayed secret for long on a military base. Rumors spread through the station within hours. The shy girl from 6th Squad had held an outpost alone for 6 hours. She had killed dozens of Vraxi warriors. She had saved both human and alien lives without hesitation. Specialist Unit Choi visited Hana in the medical bay. She sat beside the bed where the smaller woman lay unconscious, covered in bandages and connected to machines. Yuna's hands shook as she thought about all the times she had ignored Hana, talked over her, treated her like she did not matter. Corporal Teeman Park came later. He did not say anything. He just stood there looking at Hana's pale face and trying to reconcile this broken body with the warrior on the helmet camera footage. By the next day, someone in intelligence had leaked edited portions of the footage to the Coalition network. The person who leaked it was never identified, though Soman suspected it was Commander Ji-won Park herself. Some things were too important to hide behind classified stamps. The footage went viral across every species in known space. Humans called it the Stand at Delta 7. Aliens had different names for it, but they all watched. The Kalfari, who prided themselves on warrior tradition, studied the tactics. The Quellan, who valued intelligence above physical prowess, analyzed every decision Hana made. The Vraxi High Command watched it too. They recognized the truth immediately. This was not some superhuman monster. This was an ordinary human soldier who refused to give up. They placed a bounty on Hana's head, not because they wanted revenge, because they wanted to make sure no other human got the chance to demonstrate what one determined person could accomplish. In the medical bay, Hana woke to find her world completely changed. The nurse, a kind woman named Yoonji Han, told her gently that she was famous now. The whole galaxy knew her name. Hana's first response was to ask if she could have her old assignment back. She could not. Nothing would ever be the same again. The invisible girl had become the most visible human in the coalition, and she hated every second of it. The footage reached every corner of known space within 48 hours. Hana Kim's face appeared on news feeds across hundreds of worlds. The aliens had different reactions, but none of them could ignore what they had seen. On the Kalthari home world, warrior masters gathered in their combat halls to watch the footage repeatedly. They were a proud species, 7 feet tall with natural armor plating and strength that made them valuable shock troops for the coalition. They had always looked down on humans as soft creatures without honor. Now they watched a human fight for hours without backup, without hope, simply because others needed her to. The eldest warrior master, a scarred veteran named Throck, spoke words that spread through his entire people. This human understands what strength truly means. It is not about size or natural weapons. It is about refusing to break. The Quellan, a race of telepathic intellectuals, approached the footage differently. They analyzed every tactical decision Hana made. They calculated the odds she faced at each moment. By their mathematics, she should have failed at least 17 different times. Yet she succeeded. The Quellan concluded that human psychology contained elements they had not previously understood. Adaptability under extreme stress. Creative problem-solving when standard solutions failed. Persistence beyond logical reasoning. Evraxi watched the footage with cold fury. Their hive queens convened an emergency council. One human had killed dozens of their warriors and disrupted a carefully planned operation. They recognized the danger immediately. If one human could do this much damage, what could an army of them accomplish? They increased the bounty and sent specialists to study human biology for weaknesses. But the species that reacted most strongly were the ones who had considered themselves humanity's equals or superiors. The Talvani Confederation had barely accepted humanity into the coalition, arguing that Earth was too primitive and violent. Now their diplomats watched footage of a human showing more discipline and tactical awareness than many of their own elite soldiers. Ambassador Haijin Yoon found herself suddenly overwhelmed with meetings. Every species wanted to discuss humanity's role in the coalition. Some wanted humans given more responsibility. Others argued that humans were too dangerous, too unpredictable to trust with important missions. The ambassador smiled politely through every meeting while screaming internally. One soldier's helmet camera footage had created a political earthquake. On Station Artemis, Hana Kim tried to disappear. She requested return to regular duty. She asked to be transferred to a quiet posting. She even offered to resign from the military entirely. Every request was denied. Commander Jiwon Park called her into the office and got straight to the point. Private Kim, you have been promoted to corporal. Additionally, you are being assigned to an elite unit called Wraith Company. You leave in 3 days. Hannah kept her eyes down. I do not want this, Commander. I just want to do my job. I know. But this is bigger than what you want, or what I want. The galaxy is watching us now. They are reassessing what humans can do. You started something important. I did not mean to start anything. I was just trying to help people who needed help. Commander Park's expression softened slightly. I know. That is exactly why you are the right person for this. Media requests flooded the communications channels. Everyone wanted to interview the hero of Delta 7. Hana refused every single request. She would not talk to reporters. She would not make speeches. When a news crew tried to ambush her in the corridor, she literally ran away from them, that her former squad mates did not know how to act around her anymore. Teeman Park tried to make jokes like usual, but they fell flat. He could not pretend everything was normal when he remembered leaving her behind. Yuna Choi kept trying to start conversations, to connect, but Hana barely responded. The quiet girl had built walls even higher than before. Sergeant Minho Kong struggled the most. He had led that squad. He had been responsible for all of them. And he had not even noticed when Hana went missing until it was too late. The guilt ate at him. He requested a formal review of his command decisions, even though no one was officially blaming him. Private Daeun Seo was the only one Hana would talk to. He visited her in the quarters they had assigned her, a private room that felt wrong because she was used to sleeping in shared barracks. He sat down and spoke quietly. I would be dead without you. The Kalthari soldier and the Quellan too. We all know it. Hana looked at her hands. Anyone would have done the same. No, most people would have saved themselves. You came back for us even though we are not really your friends. Even though the squad leaves you out of everything. You were in trouble. That is enough reason. Daeun shook his head. That is what they do not understand. That is what the whole galaxy does not understand. You did not fight because you are superhuman, or because you have special training. You fought because it needed doing. Hana did not respond. Daeun left her alone after that, understanding that she needed space more than comfort. 3 days later, Hana boarded a transport to the training facility where Wraith Company was stationed. She carried a single bag with her personal items. Everything else had been provided by the military. New armor, new weapons, new equipment that cost more than she used to earn in a year. The transport was full of soldiers being reassigned to various posts. They all recognized her. Some stared. Others whispered. One young officer asked for her autograph. Hana wanted to crawl under her seat and disappear. A grizzled veteran sitting across from her noticed her discomfort. He had captain's insignia and scars that suggested he had earned his rank through experience rather than politics. His name tag read J. Nam. First time dealing with fame, Corporal? Hana nodded miserably. It will not get easier. People will always want something from you now. They will want you to be a symbol or a hero, or whatever fits their needs. The trick is remembering who you actually are underneath all that noise. Who are you? Hana asked quietly. Captain Junho Nam. I command Wraith Company, which means I am your new commanding officer, and I am going to make your life very difficult for the next few months. Hana looked up at him for the first time. His eyes were hard, but not unkind. Good. I do not want special treatment. Captain Nam smiled slightly. You will not get it. The footage impressed a lot of people, but my team needs to see what you can really do. Helmet cameras only show part of the story. I understand. Do you? Because half my squad thinks you are the second coming of some ancient war god. The other half thinks you got lucky, and the footage was edited to make you look better. You are going to have to prove yourself all over again. Hana felt relief wash over her for the first time since the battle. This she could handle. Proving herself through action was easier than dealing with fame or politics or expectations. She did not need people to believe she was special. She just needed them to let her work. I can do that, sir. Captain Nam studied her for a long moment. I believe you can. But understand this, Corporal Kim. Wraith Company takes the missions nobody else can complete. We operate in situations where failure means a lot of people die. If you are on my team, I need to trust you completely. And trust is earned through more than one good day. Yes, sir. The transport continued through space toward their destination. Hana looked out the window at the stars and felt the weight of everything that had changed. She had wanted the invisible. Now the entire galaxy was watching. She had wanted a quiet life. Now she was being sent to an elite unit for impossible missions. But underneath all of that, she was still the same person. The shy girl who did what needed doing because nobody else was there to do it. Maybe that would be enough. The training facility for Wraith companies sat on a moon with gravity slightly higher than Earth standard. Everything felt heavier here. Hana's legs ached after the first day of running drills. Captain Jun Ho Nam had not been joking about making her life difficult. Wraith company consisted of 12 soldiers from 5 different species. They were the best of the best, pulled from elite units across the coalition. Each one had survived situations that would have killed ordinary troops. They did not need or want some famous newcomer who might have just gotten lucky. Corporal Bora Shin was the first to test Hana. She was a sniper, known throughout human military forces for impossible shots that saved entire operations. Tall and lean, she moved with controlled grace. During the first training exercise, she pushed Hana hard, criticizing every movement and decision. Too slow. You hesitate before shooting. That gets people killed. Hana said nothing. She adjusted and tried again. Your positioning is terrible. Anyone could flank you from that angle. Hana moved to better cover and continued the drill. Is this really the soldier everyone is talking about? I have seen recruits with better fundamentals. Hana kept working. The criticism stung, but she understood what Bora was doing. Testing her. Trying to see if fame had made her soft or arrogant. She would prove herself through action, not words. Sergeant Kyung Lee ran the demolitions training. He was shorter than Hana, but built like he was made from solid muscle. His hands were covered in burn scars from years of working with explosives. He set up increasingly complicated scenarios, each one designed to be nearly impossible to solve in the time allowed. Hana approached each problem methodically. She did not always succeed. Sometimes she failed completely, but she never gave up, and she learned from each mistake. Kyung Lee watched her with calculating eyes, saying nothing. The alien members of Wraith Company were harder to read. A Kalthari warrior named Throxan observed her training sessions with crossed arms and an unreadable expression. A Quellan named Miss Through Dawn monitored her tactical decisions through their telepathic abilities, occasionally sharing observations with the others in ways Hana could not hear. A massive Talvani soldier, called Stone That Breaks, barely acknowledged her existence. 3 weeks into training, Hana still felt like an outsider. The team worked together with the kind of coordination that came from years of experience. She was the new element, the unknown factor. They did not trust her yet. The breaking point came during a combat simulation. The scenario was brutal. Wraith Company had to infiltrate a hostile facility, retrieve intelligence, and extract without being detected. If they triggered alarms, enemy reinforcements would make survival impossible. Hana was assigned to the infiltration team with Bora and Throxan. The Kalthari warrior took point, his natural strength allowing him to force open sealed doors. Bora moved like a ghost, her sniper rifle ready for any threats. Hana stayed in the middle, feeling useless. They reached the intelligence vault without incident. Hana began working on the security systems, while the others covered the entrances. Her engineering training gave her an advantage here. She understood the logic of the systems, could see how they fit together. Halfway through the bypass, alarms screamed. Someone had made a mistake. The simulation enemies began converging on their position. We have to abort, Bora said through the communication line. We cannot complete the objective now. Hana's hands did not stop moving. Give me 30 seconds. We do not have 30 seconds. Throxon growled, his weapon firing at approaching enemies. The human is correct. We are this close. We finish. 20 seconds. Hana's fingers flew across the interface. The security system was more complicated than she expected, but the logic was still there. Everything followed patterns. They are at the door. Bora fired through a gap in the barricade. 15 seconds maximum. 10 seconds. Hana saw the solution. It required doing something incredibly stupid. She ripped out a power coupling and directly connected two systems that were never meant to touch. Sparks flew. The simulation registered catastrophic system failure. The vault opened. Got it. Hana grabbed the intelligence package, and they ran. The extraction was chaos. The entire facility knew their position. Enemies poured in from every direction. Wraith Company fought their way out, step by bloody step. In the confusion, Hana found herself separated from Bora and Throxon, pinned down behind inadequate cover. She could have waited for rescue. The simulation would have marked her as captured, and they would restart. But something about giving up felt wrong. She remembered Delta 7. She remembered that nobody was coming to save her there, either. Hana grabbed a fallen weapon from a simulated enemy and used the confusion to slip through the enemy formation. She did not fight her way out. She became invisible again, moving through gaps in their awareness. The enemies were looking for soldiers fighting back, not someone quietly walking past them. She made it to the extraction point before the rest of the team. When they arrived, breathing hard and covered in simulated injuries, they found her waiting calmly. Captain Jun-Ho Nam ended the simulation. The entire team gathered for the after-action review. Hana expected criticism. She had improvised. She had taken risks. She had not followed standard procedure. Instead, Captain Nam looked at each team member. Evaluations. Sergeant Kyung Lee spoke first. She does not quit. That matters more than perfect technique. Bora Shin nodded slowly. She thinks differently than we do. That could be useful. Throxon, the Kalthari warrior, stood and approached Hana. He was enormous, towering over her small frame. I have watched you train for 3 weeks. I have seen you fail many times. But you never make the same mistake twice. And you never give up. He placed one massive hand on her shoulder. You are worthy of fighting beside warriors. Coming from a Kalthari, this was the highest compliment possible. The rest of the team seemed to relax slightly. If Throxon accepted her, they could work with that. That evening, the team gathered in the common area. It was the first time they invited Hana to join them socially. They did not make a big deal of it. Bora simply looked at her and said, You coming or not? They talked about missions, about near-death experiences, about the strange politics of the coalition. Hana mostly listened, as always. But Mist Through Dawn, the Quellan, asked her a direct question. Why do humans persist when logic suggests giving up? Hana thought carefully before answering. Because giving up means someone else suffers. Even if we cannot save everyone, trying is better than doing nothing. That is not logical. Sometimes retreat is the correct tactical choice. Maybe, but humans did not survive on Earth by being logical. We survived by being stubborn, by hunting prey until it collapsed from exhaustion, by crossing oceans in small boats because we wanted to see what was on the other side. Logic says to stay safe. Humans say to see what happens if we try anyway. The Quellan tilted their head thoughtfully. This explains much about your species. You are persistence given physical form. Stone that breaks, the massive Talvani, spoke for the first time. His voice was deep and rumbling. The other species fear this about humans. You do not know when to stop. Hannah smiled slightly. Yes, that is exactly right. Captain Jun Ho Nam watched this exchange with satisfaction. His team was beginning to understand what made humans different. Not stronger or smarter or faster, just incredibly stubborn about surviving. 2 days later, orders came through. Wraith Company was being deployed. The Vraxi had launched a major offensive across 3 sectors. Coalition forces were being overwhelmed. Command needed something impossible done. As they prepared for departure, Bora caught Hana's arm. Are you ready for this? Real combat with this team is different from training. Hana checked her equipment one more time. Her helmet camera was mounted and functioning. Some habits never changed. I do not know if I am ready, but I will do my best. That is all any of us can do. Bora paused. For what it matters, I am glad you are on this team. Hana felt warmth in her chest. Acceptance, not because of fame or footage, but because she had proven herself through sweat and effort. This was what she had always wanted. To be valued for what she could do, not how much noise she made. The transport lifted off, carrying Wraith Company toward another impossible mission. Hana looked at her teammates, these warriors from different worlds who had accepted her as one of their own. Whatever came next, she would face it the only way she knew how. By refusing to give up, the Vraxi command ship hung in space like a massive piece of chitin and metal. Intelligence reported it coordinated attacks across 3 entire sectors. If Wraith Company could infiltrate the ship and steal their strategic database, the Coalition could predict and counter Vraxi movements for months. The problem was getting inside. Captain Jun Ho Nam briefed the team during approach. This is a suicide mission by any reasonable assessment. High Command gives us a 15% chance of success. Anyone wants to back out. Now is the time. Nobody moved. Hana felt her heart hammering, but kept her face calm. This was why they had trained so hard. This was what elite soldiers did. The infiltration plan relied on a captured Vraxi transport. Sergeant Kung Lee had modified it to pass basic scans. They would dock with the command ship during a shift change, slip inside during the confusion, and reach the data core before anyone realized they did not belong. Everything went wrong in the first 5 minutes. The Vraxi had changed their security protocol since intelligence gathered the data. Their transport was flagged immediately. Alarms screamed through the docking bay. Vraxi warriors poured toward their position from every corridor. Captain Nam made the call instantly. Plan is dead. We go loud. Objective remains the same. Reach the data core. Get the intelligence. Extract. Move. Wraith Company fought their way deeper into the ship. The close corridors negated the Vraxi numbers advantage. Ora Shin picked off enemies with precise shots. Throck Sun used his massive strength to physically throw Vraxi warriors back. Stone that breaks absorbed hits that would have killed anyone else and kept moving forward. Hana stayed with the main group, using her engineering knowledge to seal doors behind them and delay pursuit. Her helmet camera recorded everything. She had gotten used to its presence over the months. It felt natural now. They reached a junction where 3 corridors met. Captain Nam checked his tactical display and cursed. We have enemies ahead and behind. No way through. Mist through dawn, the Quellan reached out with their telepathic senses. Many minds approach. Too many to fight through. Hana studied the corridor walls. She pulled up schematics on her display. There is a maintenance shaft here. It connects to the ventilation system. Too small for most species, but humans can fit. One person scouting ahead does not help us, Captain Nam said. Not scouting. Sabotage. The environmental controls run through this section. If I can cause enough chaos with life support, they will have to pull warriors from the pursuit to deal with it. It was a terrible plan. It meant splitting up. It meant Hannah going alone into enemy territory with no backup. Captain Nam looked at her for a long moment. How confident are you? 60%. Maybe 70. Those are not good odds. They are better than fighting through those numbers directly. Captain Nam glanced at the rest of the team. Throck Sun gave a slight nod. Bora Shin looked worried, but did not object. The captain made his decision. Do it. You have 10 minutes before we have to move regardless. Do not die, Corporal. That is an order. Hannah forced open the maintenance panel and crawled inside. The shaft was tight even for her small frame. She could hear the helmet camera scraping against metal as she moved. Part of her mind noticed that this footage would probably end up analyzed by tacticians across the galaxy. The thought made her want to laugh hysterically. She reached the environmental controls faster than expected. The Vraxi had not bothered securing them because they never imagined someone small enough to reach them would try. Hannah pulled out her toolkit and got to work. She did not just disable the systems. She created failures that would cascade through multiple decks. Life support alarms triggered across the ship. Atmosphere began venting from sections that were supposed to be secure. Temperature controls went haywire. Emergency protocols activated automatically. Chaos. Beautiful. Distracting chaos. Hannah made her way back through the shafts. She could hear confusion in the Vraxi communications. They were pulling warriors from the pursuit teams to address the environmental emergencies. The plan was working. She dropped out of a vent right in front of a surprised Vraxi warrior. They stared at each other for a frozen moment. Then Hannah shot it and kept moving. No hesitation. No time for fear. Just do what needed doing. She found Wraith Company 2 corridors from the data core. They had used her distraction to advance significantly. Captain Nam gave her a nod of approval that meant more than any medal. The data core room was heavily defended. 6 Vraxi warriors stood between them and the objective. Wraith Company had 8 soldiers left, all wounded to varying degrees. The odds were not terrible, but they were not good either. The fight was brutal and close. Bora Shin took a plasma burn to her shoulder, but kept shooting. Throck Sun roared challenges in his native language and crushed enemies with his bare hands. Sergeant Kyung Lee threw grenades with perfect precision. Stone with brakes absorbed hit after hit, protecting others with his massive body. Hannah fought alongside them. She was not the strongest, or the fastest, or the best shot, but she was there, doing her part, refusing to quit. Her helmet camera caught all of it. Not just her actions, but everyone's. The whole team working together. They reached the data core. Mist through dawn began the download process, while the others held the entrance. More Vraxi warriors were coming. A lot more. The whole ship knew where they were now. Captain Junho Nam took a plasma bolt to the chest. The hit threw him backward. He tried to stand, but his legs would not work. Hannah dragged him to cover, while Throxon stepped forward to fill the gap. Captain. She checked his wounds. Bad. Very bad. The combat suit had absorbed some of the hit, but not enough. Leave me, he gasped. Get the data. Get out. No. That is an order, Corporal. Hannah looked at him with those quiet eyes that had stared down overwhelming odds before. With respect, sir, I do not follow orders that tell me to abandon people. I did not start at Delta 7, and I will not start now. Despite the pain, Captain Nam almost smiled. Stubborn human, yes, sir. Mist through dawn announced the download was complete. Now they just had to survive long enough to reach their extraction point. The problem was the extraction point was on the other side of the ship, and Captain Nam could not walk. Throxon solved the problem by simply picking up the captain and carrying him like he weighed nothing. We leave no one behind. This is the way of warriors. The retreat was a nightmare. They had to fight through Vraxi forces that knew exactly where they were going. Bora Shin ran out of ammunition and switched to a captured weapon. Kyung Lee used his last grenades to collapse corridors behind them. Stoned that Breaks could barely move anymore, but kept putting himself between enemies and his wounded teammates. Hannah found herself at the front of the retreat, leading them through maintenance routes and ventilation shafts. She used every trick she had learned, every shortcut her engineering knowledge suggested. The rest of the team followed her without question now. They trusted her. They reached the docking bay to find their transport destroyed. The Vraxi had made sure they had no easy escape. Captain Nam, fading in and out of consciousness, managed to speak. Backup plan. Steal one of theirs. It was insane. It was also the only option. Hannah sprinted toward the nearest Vraxi transport, with Bora covering her. She reached the ship and began hot-wiring the controls. The Vraxi system was completely different from human technology, but the basic principles were the same. Everything ran on power and logic. She could work with that dot the transport roared to life. Everyone on board now. Wraith Company piled into the stolen ship. The Vraxi fired desperately at them. Throck's son was hit twice more while carrying Captain Nam inside. Stone that Breaks collapsed halfway up the ramp. Mist Through Dawn used their telepathy to cause confusion among nearby enemies. Buying precious seconds. Hannah did not know how to fly a Vraxi transport. She figured it out anyway, pure determination overcoming lack of training. The ship lurched away from the command vessel, taking fire from every direction. She pushed the engines beyond safe limits and aimed for Coalition. Space. They made it. Barely. The transport was falling apart when Coalition ships picked them up. Medical teams rushed aboard. Captain Nam was critical but stable. Stoned that Breaks needed extensive regeneration therapy. Everyone was wounded, but they had the data. The mission was a success. Weeks later, after the hospitals and debriefings and celebrations she did not want, Hannah found herself reassigned again, this time to a training position. They wanted her to teach new recruits. She stood in front of a class of young soldiers, human and alien, all looking at her with awe. They knew who she was. They had seen the footage from Delta 7. Many had also seen the new footage from the Vraxi command ship. That footage showed something different. It showed Wraith Company fighting together. It showed humans and aliens working as one unit. It showed that Hannah was not special because she was superhuman. She was special because she represented what any human could be. "My name is Instructor Kim," she began quietly. "I am here to teach you about combat engineering and tactical adaptation. But first, I want to make something clear. I am not a hero. I am just someone who refuses to give up." She paused, looking at each young face. Some human, some alien, all nervous and eager. The galaxy thought humans were weak. They thought we were too fragile, too emotional, too primitive to stand with the great species of the Coalition. They were wrong. Not because we are better than anyone else, but because we are persistent. We keep going when others would stop. We find ways forward when there seems to be no path. That is what makes us human. A young recruit raised their hand. "What if we are afraid?" Hannah smiled slightly. "You should be afraid. Fear keeps you alive. I was terrified at Delta 7. I was terrified on the Vraxi command ship. I am terrified right now standing in front of all of you. Fear is not the problem. Giving up is the problem." She thought about Captain Junho Nam, still recovering from his wounds, but already planning to return to duty. About Throck's son, who had learned that humans understood honor as deeply as any Kalthari. About Bora and Kyung, and all the others who had accepted her not for her fame, but for her actions. "You will face impossible situations," she continued. "You will be outnumbered, outgunned, and out of options. In those moments, remember this. You do not have to be fearless. You do not have to be perfect. You just have to keep going. One more step. One more action. One more moment of refusing to quit. That is the human way. That is what makes us who we are. The class was silent. Hannah could see them processing her words, deciding whether to believe them. She knew some would not make it. War was cruel and random. But maybe, just maybe, some of them would face their own impossible moment and remember that a shy, quiet girl once held an outpost for 6 hours because people needed help. That evening, Hannah sat alone in her quarters and finally watched the footage from the Vraxi command ship. She had avoided it until now, not wanting to see herself through others' eyes. But curiosity won. The footage showed something she had not noticed in the moment. It showed her teammates looking to her for guidance multiple times. It showed Captain Nam trusting her judgment. It showed Throck's son following her lead through maintenance shafts. It showed the moment when she stopped being the new person and became part of the team. And it showed her helmet camera angle, always recording, always witnessing. The shy girl who preferred to observe rather than be observed had accidentally become the chronicler of human resilience. She closed the video and turned off the display. Tomorrow she would teach another class. Next month she might be called back to active duty. The galaxy had changed its view of humanity because of her, and that was a weight she would carry forever. But tonight, Hannah Kim was just herself. The quiet engineer who fixed broken things. The invisible soldier who refused to stay invisible when others needed help. The human who kept going because giving up was never an option. She smiled in the darkness of her quarters. Let the galaxy watch. Let them analyze every second of footage. In the end, the message was simple. Humanity did not give up. Ever doubt, and that made all the difference.